He waited for the worst moment of her life. And then he made it worse. She was standing at her father's grave, 7 months pregnant, holding a white rose. The casket hadn't been lowered yet. Mourners were still crying. And her husband stepped beside her, not to hold her, not to comfort her. He pressed a manila envelope into her hands. Divorce papers, signed, dated, highlighted where she needed to sign. His attorney needed them by Friday. 5 days. He gave her 5 days to end a 6-year marriage while burying the man who raised her and carrying a child who would never meet its grandfather. She looked down at the papers. Her hands were still dirty from throwing earth onto her father's casket. The soil smudged the first page, right across her husband's signature. But here is what he didn't know. Here is what nobody knew. She was a lawyer. She read every single word. And on page 14, she found something her dead father had hidden inside their marriage 6 years ago. A clause. A trapdoor. A weapon disguised as fine print. She signed the papers, exactly like he asked, and 5 days later, that signature destroyed him. This is a story about a man who mistook grief for weakness, about a woman who turned her darkest moment into her most powerful, and about a father who loved his daughter so much he protected her from beyond the grave. Stay until the end, because what happens on day 5 will change the way you think about every woman who has ever been underestimated. This story carries a message that matters. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most hand you the very weapon that sets you free. Strength is not the absence of pain. It is what you build from the wreckage. And the love of a good father never dies. It just waits until you need it most. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you know, or if it gave you hope during a difficult time, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life.
Sign it, Celeste. Your father's dead. There's nothing left to pretend for. The words hit her like a slap. Not loud. Grant never raised his voice in public. He said it the way he ordered coffee. Calm, measured, like he had rehearsed it in front of the bathroom mirror that morning. October wind cut through the cemetery. The kind of wind that finds every gap in your coat, every crack in your composure. Celeste stood at the edge of her father's grave, 7 months pregnant, holding a single white rose. The casket hadn't been lowered yet. The minister had just finished speaking. Mourners were still dabbing their eyes with tissues. Some were reaching for her mother's hand. And Grant stepped beside her, not to hold her, not to whisper comfort. He pressed a manila envelope into her hands. She looked down. Her fingers were numb from the cold. The envelope was thick, legal weight paper. She could feel it through the material. Her name was typed across the front in clean black letters, Celeste Whitmore. Below that, 2 words that stopped her heart. Dissolution of marriage. Her knees buckled. Not from grief this time, from the mathematics of cruelty. He calculated this. He chose the exact moment when she couldn't fight, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. He waited until she was standing over her father's casket, belly swollen with his child, surrounded by 200 mourners, and he handed her divorce papers. She pressed her tongue hard against the roof of her mouth, so hard it almost bled. Her father taught her that trick when she was 12 and lost her first debate tournament. "Press your tongue up," he had said. "It stops the tears. Judges don't cry in public, sweetheart. They cry in chambers." She didn't cry. Her mother saw Dolores Calloway, 63 years old, standing 10 feet away in a black dress she had worn to 3 funerals in 2 years, saw the envelope, saw her daughter's face go white, saw Grant's posture, the way he stood with his hands in his pockets, like a man waiting for a receipt. Wesley saw too. Celeste's younger brother, 28, hot-headed since birth. He lunged. Two uncles caught him by the arms. Wesley's face was purple with rage. His voice cracked across the cemetery like a gunshot. "Are you out of your mind?" Grant didn't flinch. He didn't even look at Wesley. He kept his eyes on Celeste, patient, expectant, like a man who had run the numbers and already knew the outcome. "I've highlighted where you need to sign," Grant said. "My attorney needs them by Friday." Friday. 5 days. He gave her 5 days to end a 6-year marriage while burying her father and growing a human being inside her body. The mourners had gone quiet. 200 people stood among the headstones, watching. Some pretended not to see. Others stared openly. Celeste could feel their eyes, the weight of their pity, the heat of their whispered judgments. She looked down at the envelope again. Her hands were still dirty from throwing earth onto her father's casket. The soil smudged the first page, brown against white, right across Grant's signature line, already signed. He signed before the funeral. He came to her father's burial with his name already on the dotted line. The baby kicked hard, right under her ribs, like a tiny fist pounding against a wall. Celeste did something no one expected. She tucked the envelope under her arm. She looked Grant dead in the eyes. His eyes were green. She used to love that about him. Now they looked like the color of something spoiled. "I'll have my attorney review them," she said. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't crack. It came out level and clear, the way her father's voice always sounded when he delivered a verdict. 6 years of marriage to a man who thought she was soft, who confused her kindness for weakness, who mistook her patience for surrender. Grant's jaw tightened. Just barely. But she caught it. He didn't expect that. He expected sobbing, begging, a scene. He expected her to crumble in front of 200 people so he could later tell his attorney she was emotionally unstable. Instead, she gave him what her father taught her to give any bully in a courtroom. Nothing. She turned away from him, walked toward the car. Her heels sank into the soft cemetery grass with every step. The wind caught her black veil. The baby kicked again, and the moment she turned her back, her hand started shaking so violently the envelope nearly slipped. Nora caught it. Nora Pemberton. Best friend since college. Nurse at St. Michael's. The kind of woman who shows up at 3 in the morning with ginger ale and a baseball bat, depending on what the situation requires. Nora caught the envelope, then caught Celeste, wrapped one arm around her waist, walked her to the car without saying a word, opened the passenger door, guided her in, buckled her seatbelt around her pregnant belly. "Don't you dare read those yet," Nora said. But Celeste was already reading. Her legal mind fired even while her heart was disintegrating. Page 1. Irreconcilable differences. Page 4. Asset division. Page 9. Custody provisions. He wanted joint custody. Of course he did. Not because he wanted the baby, because it looked better in court. Page 14. Clause 7B. She stopped breathing. Not from pain this time, from recognition. She knew that clause. She knew the handwriting in the margin notes of the prenuptial agreement attached as Exhibit C. Small, precise print. The same handwriting that had written Celeste's first steps in her baby book. The same handwriting that had signed 30 years of court opinions. Her father's handwriting. Raymond Calloway had built something into the prenuptial agreement. Something Grant never read. Something that changed everything. Celeste looked up from the papers. Through the windshield, she could see Grant walking to his car, shoulders back, confident. A man who believed he had already won. "Nora," Celeste said quietly. "Yeah?" "I need to call Barrett Knox." Nora's eyebrows shot up. "Barrett?" You haven't talked to him in 2 years. I know, but I need a divorce attorney, and I need one who's smarter than Grant's. Nora started the car. What did you find in those papers? Celeste looked down at Clause 7B, at her father's careful language, at the trap door he had built into her marriage 6 years ago, hoping she would never need it, preparing for the possibility that she would. My father, she said. I found my father. The wake filled the Calloway house with the smell of casseroles and lilies. Every surface held a foil-covered dish brought by a neighbor, or church member, or former colleague, of Judge Raymond Calloway, potato salad from the Hendersons, baked ziti from the parish council, a ham that nobody asked for and nobody touched. Celeste sat upstairs in her childhood bedroom. The door was closed. The sounds of mourners filtered up through the floorboards, muffled condolences, clinking glasses. Her mother's voice, steady and gracious, thanking people for coming. The debate team trophies were still on the shelf, dusty now. Her law school acceptance letter was still framed on the wall. The twin bed still had the same blue quilt her grandmother made. Celeste sat on that bed, 7 months pregnant, reading her divorce papers for the 3rd time. Her legal mind did what it was trained to do. Even while her heart was breaking into pieces so small she might never find them all, page by page, line by line, Grant's attorney had been sloppy. The filing used a standard template. Several provisions were boilerplate language copied without customization. The asset disclosures were incomplete. The custody terms were aggressive, but poorly supported. But the prenuptial agreement attached as Exhibit C was different. That document had been drafted by Raymond Calloway himself. Every word was precise. Every clause was airtight. And buried on page 14 was Clause 7B. In the event of dissolution initiated by either party, all financial holdings, trusts, and subsidiary accounts shall be subject to independent forensic audit before asset division is finalized. Independent forensic audit. Those 3 words were a loaded weapon, and Grant had just pulled the trigger on himself. Celeste closed her eyes. She could see her father at his desk in the study downstairs, reading glasses perched on his nose, bourbon on the side table, that brown cardigan with the elbow patches he wore every Sunday. He would draft legal documents the way other men did crossword puzzles, carefully, patiently, with quiet satisfaction when every word fit exactly where it belonged. He always knew Grant wasn't good enough. He never said it. Not once in 6 years did Raymond Calloway speak a word against his daughter's husband, but he built her an escape hatch. He wove it into the legal fabric of her marriage and waited, trusted her to find it when the time came. Dad, she whispered to the empty room, you knew. Her phone was in her hand. She pulled up Barrett Knox's number. They hadn't spoken since the holiday party 2 years ago. The night Grant had pulled her aside afterward and said, I don't like you spending time with single men from law school. It doesn't look right. She had argued, then she had stopped arguing, then she had stopped calling Barrett. She pressed the call button. It rang once, twice. Celeste, Barrett's voice was warm and immediate. No hesitation, no surprise. Wesley called me an hour ago. I'm already pulling case files. She exhaled. Something loosened in her chest. Just slightly, like a fist unclenching one finger at a time. Barrett, I need you to look at something. The prenuptial agreement, page 14, clause 7B. She heard papers shuffling on his end. Then silence. Then a low whistle. Your father drafted this, Barrett said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Celeste, this clause triggers an automatic forensic audit of all marital assets the moment divorce proceedings are initiated. Every bank account, every investment, every trust, every shell company, everything. I know. Does Grant know this clause exists? Grant didn't read past page 1 of the prenup. He told me on our wedding night that prenups were just formalities. He signed it like it was a parking ticket. Barrett was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How fast can you get me the complete financial records you have access to?" "I can have them to you by morning." "Good, because I found something in Grant's public filings that doesn't add up. And if this clause does what I think it does, we're about to find out exactly what your husband has been hiding." Celeste rubbed her belly. The baby was moving, turning, restless. She looked at the framed acceptance letter on the wall. Georgetown Law. She graduated second in her class. She clerked for a federal appellate judge. She passed the bar on her first attempt. Then she married Grant Whitmore, and somehow, slowly, like water evaporating so gradually you don't notice the glass emptying, she had become someone who asked permission to call her friends. The baby kicked, hard, almost like an exclamation point. She laughed, quietly, for the first time in 48 hours. "Your grandfather would have liked this fight," she whispered to her belly. Barrett's voice came through the phone again. "Celeste, one more thing. Whatever you do, don't sign those papers yet. Not until I tell you. I won't." "And Celeste?" "Yes?" "I'm sorry about your father. He was the best man I ever knew." She pressed her tongue to the roof of her mouth. The trick worked. The tears didn't fall. "He still is," she said. Later that night, the house emptied. The casseroles went into the refrigerator. The lilies wilted on the dining table. Dee sat in Raymond's chair in the living room, staring at nothing. Wesley paced the kitchen, calling Grant every name the English language offered and inventing a few new ones. Celeste stood in her father's study. The reading glasses were still on the desk. A bourbon glass with a ring stain sat beside a leather legal pad. His calendar was open to the week he died. Thursday had Rotary lunch in blue ink. Friday had Call Barrett, Sees Prenup Review. Saturday had C's Baby Shower, written in careful letters with a small star drawn beside it. He was going to review the prenup. He was going to call Barrett. The week he died, he was already preparing. Barrett texted at 11 that night. Celeste was still in the study, surrounded by her father's books, his presence everywhere and nowhere. The text said, "Don't sign anything yet. I found something on Grant's financials. Call me in the morning. It's worse than you think." Celeste read the text 3 times. She set the phone down, picked up her father's reading glasses, held them in her palm. They were still smudged. He never cleaned them properly. Used the hem of his shirt instead of the cloth in the case. That always drove her mother crazy. She put the glasses back on the desk, exactly where he left them. Then she went upstairs to her childhood bed, the blue quilt, the familiar mattress, the sheets that still smelled faintly of Tide detergent. Her father always did the laundry, every Sunday morning. Said it relaxed him. Said the rhythm of folding was like organizing closing arguments. She pressed her face into the pillow, breathed. The baby kicked. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted each one like a heartbeat, like proof that something good still existed inside the wreckage. She fell asleep counting. The coffee in Barrett's office was terrible, burned and bitter, like it had been sitting on the warmer since the previous century. Celeste held the mug anyway. The heat felt good against her cold fingers. October had settled into the city with a vengeance. Gray skies, bare branches, the kind of weather that matched everything she was feeling. Barrett sat across from her. His desk was covered with printouts, financial statements, and highlighted legal documents. He looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was loosened. His sleeves were rolled up. There were coffee rings on 3 different legal pads. "How bad is it?" Celeste asked. Barrett leaned back in his chair. He picked up a printout and set it down again. Then he looked her directly in the eyes. Grant has been siphoning money from his firm's client accounts. $230,000 over 18 months. He's been routing it through a shell company registered in Delaware. The room was quiet. Celeste could hear the clock on the wall, the soft hum of the heating system, the muffled sound of traffic 4 stories below. She could hear all of these things because her brain had gone completely silent, like someone had unplugged it. He's not divorcing you because he fell in love with someone else, Barrett continued. He's divorcing you because if you're still his wife, when this surfaces, marital asset law means you're liable too. He's not leaving the marriage. He's fleeing a crime scene. Celeste set the coffee mug down. Her hands had gone still, perfectly still, the way they did before she delivered opening arguments, the stillness before the storm. How long has he known about the audit risk? She asked. His firm's annual internal review happens in 6 days. If the siphoning is discovered during that review, the firm reports it to regulators. Criminal charges follow. By rushing the divorce, Grant separates his assets from yours, on paper, before anyone starts looking. And Clause 7B? Barrett almost smiled. Clause 7B turns his escape plan into a trap. The moment divorce proceedings are initiated, all assets go under forensic review. An independent auditor gets full access to everything, every account, every transaction, every shell company. He didn't read the prenup. Nobody reads prenups, except your father. Your father read everything. Celeste stared at the financial printouts on Barrett's desk. Numbers, dates, account transfers. The architecture of her husband's deception laid out in neat columns, $230,000. Stolen from clients who trusted him, hidden in a company that existed only on paper. She started rearranging the pins on Barrett's desk, lining them up by size, blue, black, red. Mechanical pencil, at the end. She did this when she was processing, organizing external objects while her internal world reorganized itself. Barrett watched her do it. He didn't say anything. He remembered this from law school. The night before their contract's final, she reorganized the entire study room bookshelf by subject, then by author, then by publication date. Then she got the highest grade in the class. He wasn't just cheating on me, Celeste said quietly. He was using me. Yes, the marriage, the pregnancy, the image of a stable family, it was all cover. That's what the evidence suggests. She finished with the pens, looked up. Her eyes were dry and clear. I need to tell you something, Barrett. Something that might change the timeline. What? 6 years ago, the night before our wedding, my father took Grant into his study. They were in there for an hour. When Grant came out, he was pale. He never told me what they discussed. My father never told me either. I asked twice. Both times, Dad just said, "We came to an understanding." Barrett wrote something on his legal pad. Your father was a federal judge for 30 years. He spent his career reading people, assessing credibility, determining intent. If he wrote Clause 7B into that prenup, it wasn't boilerplate. It was specific, intentional. He saw something in Grant. He saw enough to prepare for this exact scenario. Celeste closed her eyes. A memory surfaced. 3 months before her father died. Sunday dinner at the Calloway house, roast chicken, green beans, her mother's apple pie. Her father sitting at the head of the table, casually asking her, "How are Grant's accounts looking, sweetheart?" She thought it was small talk. Her father never made small talk. Another memory. 6 months before that. Raymond, asking her if she still had her copy of the prenuptial agreement. Just make sure you know where it is, he had said. A good lawyer always knows where the important documents are. She thought he was being his usual meticulous self. Now she understood. He was preparing her, planting signposts she would need later, trusting that when the time came, his daughter would follow the trail. The door to Barrett's office opened. Nora walked in carrying a paper bag and wearing the expression of a woman who had been awake since 5 in the morning and was ready to fight someone. "Ginger tea," Nora said, setting the bag on the desk, "and a blueberry muffin. You're eating for 2, and burned coffee doesn't count as nutrition." She looked at Barrett. "Tell me we're destroying him." Celeste looked at her best friend, then at Barrett, then at the stack of evidence on the desk. "We're doing something better," Celeste said. "We're letting him destroy himself." The plan took shape over the next 2 hours. Celeste would sign the divorce papers. She would file them through Barrett, who would simultaneously trigger Clause 7B. The forensic audit would begin automatically. Grant's attorney would receive notification, but by then, the auditor would already have access to the financial records. Grant couldn't stop it without withdrawing the divorce entirely. And withdrawing the divorce would mean admitting he filed it under false pretenses. It was a perfect legal mousetrap. And Raymond Calloway had built it 6 years ago. "My father spent 30 years on the bench watching men like Grant," Celeste said, standing up. She placed both hands on her belly. The baby was quiet now, resting. "He built that clause knowing someday I might need it. I won't waste it." Her phone buzzed on the desk. She picked it up. A text from a number she didn't recognize. It read, "Celeste, this is Vivian. I think we should talk. There are things about my son you need to know." Vivian, Grant's mother, the woman who had spent 6 years correcting Celeste's table settings and suggesting she wear more flattering colors. The woman who once said, at Thanksgiving dinner, that Celeste's career made Grant feel inadequate. Celeste stared at the text. Read it again, then a third time. "Who is it?" Nora asked. "Grant's mother." "What does she want?" Celeste looked at Barrett. He raised an eyebrow. "She wants to talk," Celeste said, "and I think I should listen." The doorbell rang at 4 in the afternoon. Dee Calloway answered it. She stood in the doorway of the house where she had lived for 37 years, the house where she had raised 2 children and loved one man and buried that man 3 days ago, and she looked at Vivian Whitmore standing on her porch. 2 women who had tolerated each other for 6 years, who had sat across holiday tables making polite conversation about weather and recipes while their children's marriage slowly poisoned itself, who had smiled at each other in church and exchanged birthday cards with generic well-wishes. Now they stood on opposite sides of a doorway with nothing left to pretend about. Vivian looked smaller than Celeste remembered. She was wearing a gray coat, no makeup. Her hair was pulled back simply. She looked like a woman who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time and was finally ready to set it down. "Dolores," Vivian said, "I'm not here as his mother. I'm here as a woman who's been where your daughter is." Dee said nothing for a long moment. The wind blew leaves across the porch. Inside the house, the old radiator clanked the way it always did in October. Then Dee stepped aside and opened the door wider. Celeste was sitting in the living room. Nora was beside her. Wesley stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight. He looked at Vivian the way a guard dog looks at a stranger entering the yard. Vivian sat in the chair across from Celeste. She didn't take off her coat. She folded her hands in her lap. Her rings caught the light from the window. 3 diamonds on her left hand. A marriage that lasted 34 years. A marriage built on the same foundation as Celeste's. "I should have come to you sooner," Vivian said. "Years sooner." "Years? I'm ashamed that I didn't." "Why now?" Celeste asked. Vivian took a breath, the kind of breath that comes before a confession, before the thing you've been holding inside finally pushes its way out. "Because Grant's father did the same thing to me, 28 years ago. Different woman, same financial games, same lies, Same cruelty dressed up as practicality. The room went silent. Even Wesley uncrossed his arms. Vivian told the story. Her husband, Charles Whitmore, had been an investment manager. Charming, successful, respected in their community, he had an affair with a woman at his firm. When Vivian discovered it, Charles didn't apologize. He restructured their finances, moved assets into accounts she couldn't access, hired an attorney who specialized in protecting wealthy men from their wives. He didn't just betray me, Vivian said. He made me complicit in my own destruction. He convinced me that leaving would ruin the children, that no one would believe me, that I should be grateful for the life he provided. She paused, looked at her hands. I stayed. I regret it every single day. Celeste watched her mother-in-law's face, the lines around her eyes, the set of her mouth. 28 years of swallowed words and suppressed rage and smiling at dinner parties while her husband sat beside his mistress. Grant watched his father do this to me, Vivian continued. He watched, he learned, and I said nothing. I let him believe it was normal. That's my fault. That's the thing I have to live with. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Inside were bank statements, account numbers, a storage unit receipt, physical documents that Charles Whitmore had kept and that Vivian had found after his death 3 years ago. Grant is using the same attorney his father used, Vivian said. Same firm, same playbook. Richard Devane and Associates. They specialize in hiding assets during divorce proceedings. They've been doing it for decades. She slid the folder across the coffee table toward Celeste. There's a second bank account Grant doesn't know I know about, and a storage unit on Maple Street with physical documents. Financial records he thought he destroyed digitally, but Grant is his father's son. He keeps paper copies, just in case. Celeste took the folder, opened it. Inside were photocopied bank statements showing transfers to an account she had never seen. The amounts were significant, 30,000 here, 45,000 there, spread across 16 months. Vivian reached into her purse again. This time she pulled out a photograph. It was Grant as a toddler. Blonde curls, green eyes, smiling at the camera with pure, uncomplicated joy. The kind of photograph every mother keeps. The kind that breaks your heart when you realize who that child became. Vivian looked at the photograph, then at Celeste's pregnant belly. Her eyes filled with tears for the first time. Make sure this one knows a different kind of man, she said. She held out the photograph. Celeste took it. Their hands touched. Both were shaking. The moment hung in the air. Two women connected by a man who had failed them both. Grandmother and mother of a child who hadn't been born yet. The past and the future, meeting over a coffee table, covered in evidence of betrayal. Dee appeared in the doorway carrying a tray with tea. She set it down without a word, poured 4 cups, handed one to Vivian. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Not friendship, not forgiveness, understanding. After Vivian left, Wesley exploded. I'm going over there tonight. I'm going to look him in the face and tell him exactly what kind of man he is. Celeste shook her head. Wes. No. He deserves it. He deserves a lot of things. But Dad was a judge. He didn't solve problems with his fists. He solved them with paper. She held up the folder Vivian had given her. I'm going to bury Grant in paper. That night, Celeste sat in her father's study. His reading glasses on the desk, his bourbon glass with the ring stain, the calendar open to the week he died. She picked up his favorite pen, uncapped it, wrote on the legal pad beside the bourbon glass. Clause 7B, Vivian's documents, Barrett, storage unit on Maple Street. She was building a case the way her father taught her, evidence first, strategy second, emotion third. Her phone rang. Barrett's name, on the screen. Celeste, we have a new problem. What? Tiffany Loring, Grant's colleague at the firm, she's pregnant, due 3 weeks after you. The pen stopped moving. The room contracted. The walls, the bookshelves, her father's entire life compressed into a single point of pain that radiated outward through her chest. Another woman, another baby, another lie. She set the pen down carefully, pressed her palms flat against the desk, breathed in through her nose, out through her mouth, the way she did before entering a courtroom, before facing a hostile witness, before opening her mouth to speak when every cell in her body wanted to scream. "Celeste?" Barrett's voice, careful. "Are you there?" "I'm here," she said. "Tell me everything." The coffee shop was neutral territory, a place with exposed brick walls and acoustic folk music and baristas who made latte art that nobody appreciated. Celeste chose it because it was public, because witnesses mattered, because she didn't trust herself to have this conversation in private. Tiffany Loring arrived 7 minutes late. She was 27 years old, blonde, wearing a navy blue dress that didn't quite hide her pregnancy. 5 months along, just starting to show. She moved through the door with the nervous energy of a woman who had been rehearsing what to say and had already forgotten all of it. She saw Celeste, stopped. For a long moment, the two women just looked at each other, the wife and the other woman, both pregnant with the same man's children. It was the kind of scene that belonged in a movie, except it smelled like espresso, and someone's phone was playing a notification sound that sounded like a bird. Tiffany sat down. She didn't make eye contact. She wrapped both hands around her water glass, like it was the only solid thing in the room. "Before you say anything," Tiffany started. Her voice was tight, controlled. "I know what I did was wrong. I know you hate me. I would hate me." "I don't hate you," Celeste said. Tiffany looked up, surprised, suspicious. "I don't have the energy to hate you," Celeste clarified. "I'm 7 months pregnant. I buried my father 4 days ago, and my husband served me divorce papers at the graveside. My emotional capacity is currently allocated elsewhere." Tiffany's mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't known about the funeral. Celeste could see it in her face. Grant didn't tell her that part. "He served you papers at the funeral?" Tiffany whispered. "Beside the casket, before they lowered it." Tiffany set her water glass down. Her hands were trembling. "He told me you were cold, distant, that the pregnancy was an accident you resented. He said you hadn't been intimate in over a year. He said he was trapped in a loveless marriage." Celeste listened, without interrupting. She recognized every word, not because Grant had said them to her, but because they were standard lines, textbook phrases from the cheating husband playbook. Every family law attorney in the country had heard them 1,000 times. "He told me he was going to leave," Tiffany continued. "He said he just needed to wait for the right time. When I got pregnant, he said it was a sign that we were meant to be together." "When did it start?" Celeste asked. 18 months ago, at a firm retreat in Scottsdale." 18 months, Celeste did the math. 18 months ago, she and Grant had been trying to conceive. She had been tracking her cycle, taking vitamins, reading books about fertility. Grant had been coming home from work every night, kissing her forehead, asking about her day, and then going to bed with Tiffany. Something shifted inside Celeste. Not anger, exactly. Anger was too simple. This was something deeper, like watching a building you lived in get demolished and realizing it had been condemned for years. The foundation was rotten, the walls were hollow. She just hadn't seen it because she was standing inside. "I'm not here to fight with you, Tiffany," Celeste said. "I'm here to warn you." Tiffany went still. "Grant isn't leaving me because he loves you. He's leaving me because he's been stealing money from his firm. Over $200,000 routed through a shell company. He needs the divorce finalized before the firm's audit discovers it. If we're still married when it surfaces, I'm liable. That's why the rush. That's why the funeral. You weren't the reason. You were the excuse. The color drained from Tiffany's face, slowly, like watching paint fade in sunlight. That's not possible, she said. He's a senior vice president. He makes $300,000 a year. He makes $300,000 a year and steals on top of it. I have the financial records. My attorney has the paper trail. Tiffany stared at the table. Her latte art was dissolving into brown soup. The bird notification sound went off again on someone's phone. A barista dropped a ceramic mug, and it shattered on the floor. Nobody flinched. I didn't know, Tiffany said. I swear, I didn't know about any of this. I believe you. Why? Because I didn't know either, and I lived with him for 6 years. 2 pregnant women, sitting across from each other in a coffee shop, both holding cups they hadn't sipped, both carrying the children of a man who had lied to them in equal measure with equal conviction. The parallel was deafening. Tiffany reached into her purse, pulled out a flash drive, small, silver. She placed it on the table between them. I recorded things, she said quietly. Voicemails, texts, emails. Where Grant talks about moving money, about accounts I didn't understand, about what he called restructuring before the quarterly review. Celeste looked at the flash drive, then at Tiffany. Why did you record them? Because something felt off. The way he talked about money, the way he got nervous before meetings, the way he checked his phone in the middle of the night. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not stupid either. Why are you giving me this? Tiffany's chin trembled. Because I Googled your father last night. After Grant told me about the funeral, I looked up Raymond Calloway. I read about his career, his rulings, the tributes people wrote. He was a good man. She paused. And I realized that if Grant lied to you, his wife, the mother of his child, for 6 years, then he's been lying to me for 18 months. The only question is, how much? Celeste picked up the flash drive. It was warm from Tiffany's hand, light as a feather, heavy as a verdict. Thank you, Celeste said. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me, and for this baby who's going to need a father who either exists or doesn't. I can't raise a child in the gray area. Celeste nodded. She understood gray areas. She had lived in one for 6 years. They stood at the same time, awkwardly, the way 2 pregnant women do, with the physics of balance working against them. Tiffany gathered her purse, hesitated. He told me I was the love of his life, Tiffany said. Celeste almost laughed, not cruelly, sadly. He told me that too, every morning. While brushing his teeth, for 6 years, she watched Tiffany walk out of the coffee shop, into the October cold, a 27-year-old woman who had believed a fairy tale and was now waking up inside a crime report. Celeste sat back down, alone at the table, 2 untouched cups of tea, the flash drive in her hand. She turned it over between her fingers. I didn't lose a husband, she whispered to no one. I lost a lie I was living inside. The barista came to clear the table. Asked if she wanted anything else. Celeste looked up at him. Young, 22 maybe, earnest face, probably working his way through college. No, she said. I have everything I need. That night, Barrett had the prenup clause, Vivian's documents, Tiffany's flash drive, and the public financial filings. The case was no longer a theory. It was a structure. Solid, documented, airtight. Celeste was reviewing documents at the kitchen table of her childhood home. Midnight. Her mother was asleep. Wesley was in the guest room. The house was quiet except for the old radiator and the wind outside. She reached for her water glass and knocked a stack of papers off the table. As she bent to pick them up, something caught her eye. Her father's desk, the bottom drawer, slightly open. She walked over, pulled the drawer open. Inside were files, case notes, old receipts, and at the bottom, an envelope, white, sealed, her name written across the front in her father's handwriting. Celeste. Personal. Dated 2 weeks before he died. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She held it to the light, turned it over. The seal was unbroken. He wrote it, sealed it, and put it in the drawer, waiting for her to find it when she needed it. She didn't open it, not yet. She pressed it against her chest, closed her eyes, listened to the house creak in the wind, listened to the baby move inside her. Some things needed the right moment. Her father had taught her that too. She opened the letter at 3 in the morning, the hour when the world is honest, when there's no performance left, no audience, just the truth, and whoever is brave enough to sit with it. Celeste sat in her father's study. The lamp cast warm light across the desk, the reading glasses, the bourbon glass, the legal pads and law books and framed photographs of every Callaway graduation, wedding, and holiday for the past 4 decades. She broke the seal, unfolded the letter, her father's handwriting, small, precise, the same careful print he used for court opinions and grocery lists and birthday cards and everything in between. My darling girl. She pressed her hand over her mouth, those 2 words. His voice, she could hear it, deep and steady and certain, the voice that read her bedtime stories and quizzed her for the bar exam and told her she was the finest attorney he had ever trained, including himself. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and something has gone wrong in your life that brought you to my desk looking for answers. I don't know what it is, but I know you. You'll handle it the way I taught you, with evidence, with patience, with dignity. Her eyes blurred. She blinked. The words swam and reformed. The prenup is your armor. Barrett is your sword. Your mother is your shield. And you, Celeste, are the judge now. Rule wisely, rule fairly, but rule in your own favor for once. She turned the page. There was more. I spent 30 years watching people sit in my courtroom. Husbands and wives, parents and children, business partners and former friends. I learned one thing above all others. The people who survive are not the ones who are strongest. They are the ones who know when to stop fighting someone else's battle and start fighting their own. The letter ended with 4 words. Love, Dad. Always. Forward. Forward. His word. His philosophy. His answer to every setback. Every failure. Every closed door. Don't look back. Don't stand still. Forward. Celeste broke. Not quietly. Not gracefully. Not the way women break in movies, where a single tear slides down a perfect cheek. She broke the way real people break. Ugly, loud, complete. She slid off the chair, onto the floor of the study, clutching the letter, and she sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place below her stomach, below the baby, below everything she thought she understood about herself. I needed you here for this, Dad. She was talking to the room, to the books, to the glasses on the desk, to the man who wasn't there. I needed you, not a letter, not a clause, you. I needed you to tell me I'm going to be okay. I needed you to sit across from me and look at me with those eyes and tell me that I'm enough. The baby kicked. Hard. The hardest kick yet. Like a small foot slamming against a wall. Like a tiny person inside her saying, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. She pressed both hands against her belly. The kicks continued. Rhythmic, insistent. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I hear you. She lay on the floor of the study. The carpet was old, beige, stained in the corner where Wesley spilled grape juice in 1997. The ceiling had a crack that had been there since Celeste was 14. The house breathed around her, old wood and old memories and the faint smell of her father's bourbon. At dawn, Dee found her, asleep on the floor, the letter clutched in one hand, the other hand on her belly. Dee didn't wake her. She went to the closet, pulled out Raymond's brown cardigan, the one with the elbow patches, the one that smelled like Old Spice and legal briefs and Sunday morning laundry. She draped it over her daughter, tucked the edges around her pregnant belly. Then she sat in Raymond's chair, the chair that still bore the impression of his body, and she watched her daughter sleep. She made a promise to her dead husband, silently, in the language of 40 years of marriage, the language that doesn't need words. I'll hold it together, Ray, for her, for the baby, for all of us. When Celeste woke, the light had changed, golden, morning. She was still on the floor. The cardigan was around her shoulders. Her mother was in the chair. Mom, I'm here. He left me a letter. I know. I saw it. He knew about Grant? Dee was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Your father knew about everyone, sweetheart. That was his gift and his burden. Celeste sat up. Her back ached. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair was a disaster. She looked like a woman who had spent the night crying on a floor, which is exactly what she was. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Grant. I've spoken with my attorney. If you don't sign by Friday, I'll pursue full custody. I'll argue emotional instability, grief, hormones. I have witnesses who saw you at the funeral. You could barely stand. Is that the kind of mother a judge would trust with a newborn? Celeste read the text, read it again. Each word was a small, precise blade designed to find the soft parts, the vulnerable places, the fears she hadn't spoken out loud. Am I unfit? The thought crept in. I'm sleeping on floors, crying at 3 a.m. My hands won't stop shaking. My father is dead and my husband is a criminal, and I'm growing a baby inside a body that feels like it's falling apart. She stood up, walked to the bathroom, looked in the mirror. Pregnant, exhausted, mascara smudged from 2 days ago, hair tangled, eyes red. She whispered to her reflection, Who am I without him? Then quieter, Who was I with him? The second question was worse, because the answer was clear. She was less. With Grant, she was less. Less confident, less ambitious, less herself. He had trimmed her down so gradually she didn't notice. A comment here about her career, a suggestion there about her friends. A slow, patient diminishment disguised as love. She turned on the bath. Hot water. Steam rising. She climbed in fully clothed. Black sweater, maternity leggings, socks. She sat in the tub as the water rose around her. It soaked through her clothes. Warm, heavy, like being held by something that didn't need anything from her. She sat there as the water cooled. Didn't cry, didn't think, just existed. Her belly rose above the waterline like a small island. The baby was still. Sleeping probably. Even babies need rest from the weight of their mother's grief. Nora found her an hour later, didn't gasp, didn't panic, didn't ask what she was doing sitting in a cold bathtub, in her clothes at 8 a.m. Nora just sat down on the bathroom floor, reached over the edge of the tub, took Celeste's hand. They stayed like that. 2 women in a bathroom, one wet and broken and pregnant, one sitting on cold tile holding her friend's hand. No words, no advice, no platitudes. Sometimes love isn't words. It's sitting on a bathroom floor at 8 a.m. and not asking questions. Celeste's phone rang. Nora reached over and picked it up from the sink counter, looked at the screen. Barrett, she said. Celeste took the phone with her wet hand. Barrett. Celeste, listen to me carefully. Grant's attorney just contacted me. They know about the audit clause. Grant is trying to withdraw the divorce filing before we can execute it. We have 48 hours. The water in the tub was cold now. Celeste stood up. Water streamed from her clothes onto the floor. She stepped out of the tub, looked at Nora, looked at herself in the mirror. Wet, wrecked, pregnant, alive. Then we have 48 hours, she said. Let's not waste them. 48 hours. That was the window. Grant's attorney had discovered the audit clause and was preparing an emergency motion to withdraw the divorce filing. If the withdrawal was granted before the forensic auditor was formally assigned, the clause would be voided. The trap door Raymond built would close, and Grant would walk away clean. Barrett worked through the night. Celeste sat in his office, wrapped in her father's cardigan, eating the crackers Nora brought every 2 hours because the baby demanded sustenance, even when its mother wanted to stop eating entirely. The forensic auditor was assigned by 9 in the morning, a man named Arthur Webb, 62 years old, former financial crimes investigator. He had served as an expert witness in Raymond Calloway's courtroom on 4 separate occasions over 15 years. He owed Raymond's memory a debt of professional respect. When Barrett called him, Arthur agreed to take the case before Barrett finished the first sentence. "Tell me what you need," Arthur said. "Everything," Barrett replied. "Every account, every transfer, every shell company, and I need the preliminary report in 48 hours. For Ray's daughter, I'll have it in 36. The clock moved. Celeste filed the signed divorce papers through Barrett's office at 10 in the morning. Clause 7B activated the moment the filing was recorded. The forensic audit was now legally mandated. Grant's attorney could contest it, but the wheels were turning. Grant didn't know, not yet. He was at his office, working, believing that his wife was home, crying into casseroles and signing documents she was too grief-stricken to read. He had built his entire strategy on the assumption that Celeste was broken, that the funeral had destroyed her, that the pregnancy made her weak, that the 5-day deadline would create panic. He was wrong about everything. At noon, Grant's attorney filed the emergency motion to withdraw. The motion landed on the desk of Judge Franklin Hale, 58 years old, family court, 30 years on the bench. He played chess with Raymond Calloway every Friday for the last decade of Raymond's life. Judge Hale read the motion. Then he read the prenuptial agreement. Then he read Clause 7B. Then he set everything down, removed his glasses, and rubbed the bridge of his nose the way judges do when they are thinking about precedent and principle and the difference between what is legal and what is right. He scheduled the hearing for 4 o'clock the following afternoon. Meanwhile, Celeste sat in her father's study. She had moved operations there. Legal pads covered the desk. Barrett called every hour with updates. Nora maintained a steady supply of ginger tea and rational perspective. Wesley stood guard at the front door like he was expecting Grant to show up, which he was. And Grant did show up. At 7 that evening, he rang the doorbell of the Calloway house like a salesman with something to pitch. Wesley opened the door, stood in the frame, arms crossed, 6 feet 2 inches of younger brother energy. "She doesn't want to see you," Wesley said. "This is between me and my wife. Your wife is my sister, and you served her divorce papers at our father's funeral. So right now, this is between you and me." "Wesley, don't be dramatic." Celeste appeared in the hallway behind her brother. She was wearing their father's cardigan. Her hair was pulled back. She looked tired and clear-eyed and absolutely certain. "Let him in, Wes." Wesley didn't move. "Wes, let him in." Wesley stepped aside, slowly, like a door opening against its will. Grant walked into the house. He looked different, smaller somehow. The confidence had thinned. His suit was wrinkled, which was something Celeste had never seen before. Grant pressed his suits every morning. That wrinkle was the first crack in the facade. Celeste, we can work this out, he said. He used the voice, the reasonable voice. The let's be adults about this voice he used when he wanted her to feel like the emotional one. I was hasty. The funeral, I was wrong to do that. I admit it. Let's just stop the filing and talk. Talk, she repeated. Yes, like adults. We can go to counseling. We can figure this out. You want counseling. I want to save our marriage. She looked at him, really looked, the green eyes she once loved, the jaw she once traced with her fingertip while he slept, the hands that had held hers at the altar and served her divorce papers at a graveside. You served me papers at my father's grave, she said, while I was carrying your child. You timed it to the hour. You brought the envelope to a cemetery. You signed before the funeral. You planned it the way you plan client presentations. You don't get to talk this out. Celeste, you get Clause 7B. His face changed. The mask slipped. For just a moment, she saw what was underneath. Not remorse, not love. Fear. Your father was always meddling in our marriage, Grant said. The reasonable voice was gone. Something harder underneath. My father was protecting me from you, Celeste replied. And he did it from the grave. Be grateful he was a judge and not something less forgiving. Grant looked around the room. Wesley stood in the hallway, arms crossed, blocking the path to the rest of the house. Dee was in the kitchen doorway, watching silently. Nora sat on the stairs, phone in hand, probably recording. He was surrounded by the people he had underestimated, the soft ones, the emotional ones, the women and the younger brother he had dismissed as irrelevant. They were all looking at him, and for the first time, he had nothing to say. He left without closing the door. Wesley closed it for him, quietly, which was somehow more devastating than slamming it. That night, Grant tried another angle. He went to Tiffany. Tell them you'll testify that Celeste was abusive, he said, that she knew about us and threatened you, that she's unstable. Tiffany sat on her couch, 5 months pregnant, looking at the man she had believed in and seeing, finally, what was actually there. I gave her the flash drive, Grant. Silence. Long, cold. The kind of silence that exists in the space between a question and an answer that changes everything. What flash drive? He asked. The one with your voicemails, where you talk about the accounts and the money and what you were going to do to her in the divorce. The one where you told me exactly how much you moved and where you moved it. Grant's face went white, completely, entirely white, like someone had pulled a plug and all the color drained out at once. You recorded me, he said. You lied to me, she replied. We both played the hand we were dealt. At 11 that night, Barrett called with the preliminary audit results. Celeste, are you sitting down? I'm lying down. I'm 8 months pregnant and I've been standing for 12 hours. What is it? The number isn't 230,000. How much? Over 1.2 million. And there's a second shell company in the Cayman Islands. $1.2 million. Stolen from clients. Hidden in offshore accounts. Funneled through 2 shell companies across 2 jurisdictions. This wasn't a man cutting corners. This was a criminal enterprise run out of a corner office. Celeste stared at the ceiling of her childhood bedroom. The glow-in-the-dark stars she had stuck up there when she was 9 were still faintly visible. Orion, the Big Dipper, Cassiopeia. Her father had taught her the constellations. Barrett, she said. Yes? How long until the hearing tomorrow? 17 hours. Good. I need to find something to wear. Apparently I'm going to court. Day 5, the day Grant demanded the papers by. The day he believed his wife would either surrender or break. Instead, Celeste stood in her father's closet at 7 in the morning, choosing a blazer. His clothes were still there. The suits, the ties, the casual weekend shirts that smelled like aftershave and grass from the lawn he mowed every Saturday. Dee hadn't been able to touch them yet. She said she would, when she was ready, but not yet. Celeste found the charcoal blazer, the one he wore for closing arguments, heavy wool, well-tailored, a small ink stain on the inside of the left cuff, where a pin had leaked during a particularly long deliberation. She put it on over her maternity dress. It was too big in the shoulders. She didn't care. She looked at herself in the hall mirror, pregnant, wearing her dead father's blazer, about to walk into a courtroom and dismantle the man she married. She remembered the aisle. 6 years ago. White dress, white flowers, her father beside her, his arms steady under hers. He leaned in as they walked, whispered something. She heard it but didn't understand it then. If he ever stops deserving you, you come home. This door doesn't close. She understood now. The door had never closed. The prenup, the clause, the letter, the whispered promise on the wedding day. Her father had built an entire architecture of protection around his daughter, piece by piece, year by year, and told her about none of it, because he trusted her to find it when she needed it. The courthouse was cold. The air conditioning ran year-round, regardless of season, as if the building itself wanted everyone inside to feel slightly uncomfortable. Fluorescent lights, gray carpet, the smell of old paper and coffee from the vending machine that had been broken since the previous administration. Judge Franklin Hale's courtroom was on the 3rd floor. Dark wood paneling, the American flag, the state flag. A clock that was 4 minutes fast, which everyone knew but nobody fixed because Judge Hale liked people to arrive early. Grant was already there. Navy suit, new tie. He had gotten a haircut. He looked like a Seat who had dressed for victory. His attorney, Richard Devane, sat beside him. Silver-haired, expensive watch. The kind of attorney who charged $800 an hour and was worth every penny when you were guilty. Celeste sat on the other side. Barrett beside her, the folder of evidence on the table, Vivian's documents, Tiffany's flash drive, Arthur Webb's preliminary audit report, 36 hours of forensic accounting summarized in 47 pages. Judge Hale entered. Everyone stood. He sat. Everyone sat. He read the motion to withdraw. He read the prenuptial agreement. He read Clause 7B. He looked at the documents for a long time. The courtroom was silent except for the clock that was 4 minutes fast. Then he looked at Grant's attorney over his reading glasses. Mr. Devane, your client initiated these divorce proceedings. He did so with full knowledge that a prenuptial agreement was in effect. That agreement, drafted by the late Judge Raymond Calloway, contains a clear and unambiguous provision for forensic audit upon dissolution. Your client signed this agreement. He is bound by its terms. Devane stood. Your Honor, my client wishes to withdraw the divorce filing entirely. The matter is moot if no dissolution proceeds. The matter is not moot, Judge Hale replied. The respondent has signed and filed. The proceeding has been initiated and accepted by both parties. Your client does not get to ring the bell, Mr. Devane. The gavel came down. Once, the sound echoed off the wood paneling and the gray carpet and the 4 minutes fast clock. The forensic audit will proceed as stipulated in Clause 7B. Mr. Webb has been assigned and has already begun his review. This court will reconvene in 30 days for a preliminary findings hearing. Until then, all financial assets are frozen pursuant to the audit provision. Grant's face. Celeste watched it. She had spent 6 years reading that face, studying its moods, anticipating its storms, learning when to speak and when to stay quiet. She knew every expression it could make. This one was new. This was the face of a man who had just realized that the ground beneath him was not ground at all. It was a trap door, and it was already open. Outside the courthouse, gray sky, cold wind, the same kind of wind that had blown through the cemetery 5 days ago. Grant caught up to her in the parking lot. "You planned this, this, he said. His voice was different now. The reasonable voice was gone. The charming voice was gone. What remained was raw, exposed. You signed knowing what would happen. Celeste stopped walking, turned to face him. She was wearing her father's blazer, the shoulders too wide, the sleeves too long, and she had never felt more precisely herself. "You planned yours too, Grant," she said. "At my father's funeral. The difference is, I read the paperwork." She turned away from him, walked to her car, got in, closed the door, and only then, alone, in the sealed quiet of the car, she let herself scream. One long, raw, primal scream that came from the bottom of her lungs and filled the car and fogged the windows and lasted until she ran out of air. Then she stopped, breathed, adjusted the rear-view mirror, looked at her own eyes, red, swollen, fierce. She put on her seatbelt, adjusted it around her belly, started the engine, drove home. Arthur Webb delivered his full report on a Tuesday. 47 pages became 112. The numbers told a story that was almost elegant in its criminality. $1.2 million diverted from client trust accounts over 18 months. 2 shell companies, one registered in Delaware under the name Granite Holdings, the other in the Cayman Islands under the name Bayside Capital Partners. The money moved in increments designed to avoid automated detection. 23,000 here, 18,000 there, never enough to trigger a flag, always enough to build a fortune. Grant had been skimming from 7 different client accounts: retirement funds, college savings, an elderly widow's estate, a nonprofit's endowment. He took from people who trusted him with the money they couldn't afford to lose. The forensic report went to Barrett's office first, then to the firm's compliance department, then to the Securities and Exchange Commission, then to the United States Attorney's Office. Grant was terminated from his firm on a Wednesday afternoon. Security escorted him out of the building carrying a cardboard box. His access badge was deactivated before he reached the parking garage. His professional licenses were placed under review by 3 separate regulatory bodies. The irony was sharp enough to cut. If Grant had simply asked for a divorce like a normal person, at a kitchen table, with attorneys, with decency, with the basic human courtesy of not choosing a funeral, he could have negotiated, he could have hidden enough, he could have controlled the process, but he chose cruelty. He chose the funeral because he wanted her broken. He chose the 5-day deadline because he wanted her panicked. He chose speed over caution because he believed his wife was too emotional, too pregnant, too grief-stricken to fight. Speed made him sloppy. Cruelty made him careless, and his contempt for Celeste made him blind to the woman she actually was. Barrett sat across from Celeste in his office, the same office where this had started, the same terrible coffee, the same cluttered desk, but everything else had changed. "The settlement terms," Barrett said. He opened a folder. "You're entitled to the house, full custody, child support calculated at the standard percentage of his legitimate income, and approximately 60% of marital assets after the fraudulent funds are separated and returned to the clients." Celeste nodded. She had expected this. She had calculated most of it herself. Her legal mind had been running the numbers for weeks. "And Grant?" she asked. "Federal charges are pending. His attorney is negotiating a plea. Best case for him is 18 months minimum at a federal facility." Celeste looked out the window. November now. The trees were bare. The sky was white. The world looked like it had been stripped down to its bones. Barrett? Yes? What about Tiffany? Barrett paused, set his pen down. What about her? She's pregnant with his child, too. She's going to need support. Financial support, medical support. That baby didn't choose any of this. Celeste, you don't owe Tiffany Loring anything. I know I don't owe her. I'm not talking about debt. I'm talking about a child. Grant's child, which means my daughter's sibling. Whether anyone planned it or not. Barrett looked at her for a long time. The way he had looked at her in law school when she made an argument nobody else saw coming. The way he used to look at her before Grant made sure they stopped talking. You want me to include provisions for Tiffany's child in the settlement, he said. Yes, not for Tiffany, for the baby, child support, medical coverage, college fund if possible. That's remarkably generous. My father judged people for a living, but he taught me that justice isn't about punishment. It's about making sure the right people are protected, and children are always the right people. Barrett wrote it into the settlement agreement that afternoon. Vivian came to the Calloway house one last time. She brought a box. Inside were baby clothes, tiny onesies and soft blankets and knitted booties saved from Grant's childhood. Washed, folded, smelling of lavender dryer sheets. She had kept them for 28 years. I'm sorry for my son, Vivian said. She stood in the doorway. She didn't come inside this time. I'm sorry for my silence. I'm sorry it took your father dying for me to find my voice. Celeste took the box. The baby clothes were soft against her hands, small, impossibly small. Hard to believe a person could start out that tiny and grow into someone capable of such calculated harm. Thank you, Vivian. For what? I should have done this years ago. For choosing the right side, even though it's the harder one. Dee appeared behind Celeste. She saw the box. She saw Vivian. Two mothers standing on opposite sides of a doorway. One who raised a man who destroys. One who raised a woman who endures. They would never be friends, but something had shifted between them. Something that looked like recognition. Dee took the box from Celeste's hands and nodded at Vivian just once. A small movement, an acknowledgement that the world is complicated and people are flawed, and sometimes the bravest thing a mother can do is admit her child is wrong. Vivian nodded back. Then she walked to her car and drove away. That night, Celeste sat on the back porch of her childhood home. Fireflies were gone. For the season, the yard was dark except for the porch light and the glow from the kitchen window, where Dee was washing dishes and humming a song Raymond used to sing. Celeste was wrapped in the brown cardigan. Her belly was enormous now. 8 months. The baby would come soon. She could feel it, the heaviness, the readiness, the strange, fierce patience of a body preparing to do something extraordinary. Dee brought her decaf coffee, sat beside her on the porch swing. The chains creaked. The night was cold but not unbearable. They sat in silence for a long time. The kind of silence that only exists between a mother and daughter who have survived something together. Not comfortable exactly, but honest. Your father would have loved watching you in that courtroom, Dee said. Celeste smiled. The first real smile in weeks. Not a brave smile. Not a performing smile. A real one. He was there, Mom. He built the case 30 years before it happened. Dee reached over and took her daughter's hand, squeezed it, didn't let go. The porch swing creaked, the night deepened, the baby kicked, and somewhere in the vast, indifferent universe, in whatever place good men go when their work is done, Raymond Calloway rested. Ramona Celeste Calloway Whitmore was born on a Tuesday morning in December. 8 pounds, 2 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a full head of dark hair, and a voice that announced itself to the delivery room with the confidence of a woman who had been waiting 9 months to speak. She came into the world screaming, which made Celeste laugh. Through tears, through exhaustion, through the strange animal relief of a body completing the hardest thing it had ever done. She laughed because her daughter was loud and angry and alive and perfect. In the delivery room, Dee held one hand, Nora held the other. Wesley paced the hallway because he couldn't handle watching his sister in pain. Barrett sat in the waiting room with a case file he wasn't reading. No Grant. His absence was noted by the nurses, by the on-call doctor, by the hospital social worker who stopped by to ask gentle questions. Celeste didn't notice. That was how she knew something fundamental had shifted. 6 months ago, his absence would have been a wound. Now it was simply a fact. The sky is gray. The coffee is cold. The father of my child is not here. Facts, not feelings. Nora was the first to hold Ramona after Celeste. She cradled the baby with the practiced ease of a neonatal nurse and the trembling reverence of an aunt. "She looks like your father," Nora said. Celeste looked at her daughter's face. The nose, the set of the jaw, the way her eyes, still cloudy and new, seemed to study the room with the calm assessment of someone deciding whether or not to issue a ruling. "Yeah," Celeste said. "She does." Dee held her granddaughter and wept. Not sad tears, relief tears, joy tears, the tears of a woman who had buried her husband and almost lost her daughter, and was now holding proof that the world keeps going, that life insists on continuing, that love survives its losses. "Raymond," Dee whispered to the baby, "your name means Raymond, and he would have held you all day and never put you down." 3 months passed. Winter deepened. The Calloway house adjusted to the sounds of a newborn, the 3 in the morning feedings, the crying that echoed through rooms that had been quiet for too long, the soft singing of a grandmother who remembered every lullaby from 30 years ago. Celeste healed. Not all at once, not in a straight line. Some days she felt strong and clear and certain. Other days she stood in the shower for 45 minutes staring at the tile. Grief doesn't move in one direction. It circles. It returns. It surprises you in the grocery store when a song plays that your father liked. But she moved forward. Because that was the word. Forward. She reopened her law practice in the spring. A small office on Main Street. 2 rooms and a waiting area. She painted the walls herself, pale blue, the color of her father's favorite tie. The nameplate on the door read, "Calloway Legal, Family Law." Her first client was a woman named Diane, 52 years old, married 28 years. Her husband had served her divorce papers the day after her mastectomy, while she was still in the hospital bed, while the drain tubes were still attached. Diane sat in Celeste's office and told her story through tears. The same story with different names, the same cruelty wearing different clothes. Celeste listened, made notes, poured a glass of water, handed Diane a tissue. "I can't pay much," Diane said. "This one's pro bono," Celeste replied. "My father was a judge. He believed that justice shouldn't have a price tag. I'm still figuring out what I believe, but that part I know for sure." Barrett became her law partner. They worked well together. He handled the courtroom. She handled the strategy. They argued about case law over lunch and agreed about everything else. Something unspoken sat between them, warm and patient and unhurried. Neither of them named it yet. There was time. After everything that had happened, Celeste understood the value of time. Grant pleaded guilty to 3 counts of financial fraud and 2 counts of wire fraud. 18 months at a federal minimum security facility. His clients were reimbursed through the firm's insurance. His professional licenses were permanently revoked. At the sentencing hearing, Celeste sat in the gallery. She didn't speak, didn't need to. Grant looked at her once, just once, across the courtroom. She held his gaze for 3 seconds. Then she looked away. Not in anger, not in triumph, in release. Tiffany had her baby in January. A boy, 7 pounds, 6 ounces. She sent Celeste a photo through Barrett. The baby had Grant's green eyes and Tiffany's nose. He looked like every other newborn, small, bewildered, innocent. Celeste sent back a onesie, white cotton, size 3 months. Printed on the front in small letters was one word, cousin. Because that's what Ramona and that boy were. Whether anyone planned it or not, whether it was convenient or comfortable or easy, they shared blood, and children shouldn't pay for the failures of their parents. Tiffany texted back a single heart emoji. Nothing else was needed. The seasons turned. Ramona learned to smile, then to laugh, then to grab things with her tiny fists and refuse to let go, which Celeste considered an excellent personality trait. She had her grandfather's stubborn jaw and her mother's dark eyes and a temperament that suggested she would not be a person who accepted unfairness quietly. Celeste moved back into the house she and Grant had shared, not because she wanted to live in a place haunted by her marriage, but because it was hers now and she refused to let his memory claim any more of her real estate. She painted every room, new colors, new curtains, new furniture, arranged in new patterns that had nothing to do with Grant's opinions about interior design. She kept one thing from her father's house, the reading glasses. She put them on the desk in her home office, right next to her own. 2 pairs of glasses, 2 generations of Callaway lawyers. Ramona would grab them sometimes, smudge them with tiny fingerprints. Celeste never cleaned them. On the anniversary of her father's death, Celeste went to the cemetery. She brought Ramona, strapped into a carrier, against her chest. Wide eyes taking in the sky and the trees and the headstone with the name of a man she would never meet. Celeste stood at the grave, the same spot where Grant had handed her the envelope. The same ground, the same October wind, but nothing else was the same. "Hi, Dad," she said. "This is Ramona. She has your jaw and your temper and your habit of studying people like she's about to issue a ruling. She's going to be a handful. You would have loved that." The wind moved through the cemetery. Leaves drifted across the grass. Ramona made a sound, not quite a word, a declaration, addressed to the sky. "I read the letter," Celeste continued. "I found the claws. I used them both. Barrett was the sword, Mom was the shield, and I was the judge, just like you said." She paused, pressed her tongue to the roof of her mouth. But this time, she let the tears come. Not the breaking kind, the grateful kind. "You said forward, so that's what I'm doing. Forward, I opened a practice. I'm helping women who were where I was. And every time I sit at my desk, with your reading glasses next to mine, I feel you there. Not gone, just relocated." Ramona kicked her feet, grabbed a fistful of Celeste's scarf, pulled. "She's strong," Celeste said to the headstone. "Really strong. I think she gets that from you." The wind blew, the leaves settled. The cemetery was quiet and alive and full of the kind of peace that only exists in places where grief has finished its loudest work and settled into something permanent and manageable and shot through with love. Celeste walked back to her car, Ramona against her chest. The October sun low and golden. She passed the spot where Nora had caught her father, where Wesley had lunged, where Grant had stood with his hands in his pockets and his confidence intact, believing he had already won. She got in the car, buckled the carrier into the base, adjusted the mirror. Ramona's eyes stared back at her, green, like Grant's. But the expression was all Callaway, watchful, assessing, deciding. "Let's go home, Bug," Celeste said. She started the engine, back at the office on Monday. Barrett brought coffee. Good coffee this time. He had started going to the shop 2 blocks over because Celeste mentioned once that she liked their dark roast. He never told her this was why. She never asked. New client called this morning, Barrett said. Custody dispute. Husband hiding assets through cryptocurrency. Crypto now, Celeste said. Dad would have had thoughts about that. Your dad had thoughts about everything. He did. He really did. Her phone rang. A new client. A woman crying. The words coming fast and tangled and desperate. The same words. Different story. The same fear. Different face. Celeste leaned back in her chair. Her father's reading glasses on the desk. Ramona's photo on the shelf. Barrett's coffee growing cold because they would both forget to drink it once the work started. Take a breath, Celeste said into the phone. Her voice was steady, warm, the voice of a woman who had been in the dark and found her way out and left the light on behind her. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. On the desk, beside the reading glasses, the original divorce papers sat in a clear folder. The first page still bore the smudge of cemetery soil from the day her world changed. She kept them there, not as a reminder of what Grant did to her, as a reminder of what she did with it. The door to Celeste's office was open. It always was, just like her father promised. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with real emotional value and life lessons for our audience.